My name is Daniel and I'm 34 years old. When I was 9 years old, I found a note in my mother's coat pocket. It wasn't addressed to my father. I remember the coat still smelled like her perfume, something floral and heavy, hanging by the front door where it always hung. I never told anyone what the note said. I just remember standing in the hallway, holding that piece of paper, feeling the floor tilt under me. The hallway clock ticked. Somewhere in the kitchen, my father was humming along to the radio, completely unaware. My parents stayed married for another 6 years after that. 6 years of silence at the dinner table. 6 years of me watching my mother's phone like it was a loaded gun sitting on the counter. For 25 years after that day, I promised myself I would never build a life on secrets. I checked every detail. I asked every question. Not because I didn't trust people, because I didn't trust silence. Silence was where the note had lived. Silence was where my father had slowly disappeared, piece by piece, until he was just a man who ate breakfast across from a woman he no longer knew. By the time I was 15, I had learned to read a room in 3 seconds flat, who was lying, who was tired, who was pretending. It was a skill that made me a good accountant, later on. It also made me exhausting to date, for a while. I met Claire 4 years ago, at a mutual friend's barbecue, standing near a cooler of drinks nobody was watching. She was 31, an occupational therapist, the kind of person who remembered the names of your coworkers' kids and asked about them by name 6 months later. She left sticky notes on the bathroom mirror, "You've got this before my board exams, proud of you before my presentations." Little yellow squares stuck at eye level, her handwriting slightly slanted to the left. She never raised her voice. Not once in 4 years. The first time she said "I love you," we were sitting in her car in a grocery store parking lot, engine off, rain tapping on the windshield, the smell of wet asphalt drifting in through a cracked window. She said it like it was a fact, not a performance. That's the moment I decided I was done being afraid of silence. I married her 14 months later, in a small backyard ceremony with string lights and 40 guests. For 2 years, our marriage felt like the opposite of my childhood. Loud in all the right ways. Laughing in the kitchen at 7 a.m. arguing about paint colors, not secrets. Claire hummed while she cooked. I used to sit at the counter just to listen. Then, 3 weeks ago, my phone buzzed at 11:42 p.m. I was already half asleep, the TV still murmuring in the background. A text. From a number I didn't recognize. "Miss you so much today. Can't stop thinking about this morning." My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. I stared at it for what felt like an hour but was probably 40 seconds. The room felt colder than it had a minute before. Then I did something I'm still not proud of. I didn't ask Claire, asleep beside me. I didn't show her the phone. I typed back, my thumb hovering for a second before I hit send. "Miss you too." Same. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then, "I still can't believe we finally told him. Feels like a weight is gone." Told who? Told what? My hands were shaking. I wrote, "It's a lot. Can we talk tonight?" The reply came instantly. "I'm already on my way." 11 minutes later, headlights swept across my living room window, cutting a bright stripe across the ceiling. A car door slammed. Then another set of headlights. Then a third. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I opened the door and found my wife standing on the porch, phone in her hand, face white as paper, still in her pajama shirt with a coat thrown over it. Behind her, in the driveway, her sister Michelle was getting out of her car in slippers, and behind Michelle, my father-in-law, Gerald, was climbing out of his truck, moving faster than I'd ever seen a 61-year-old man move, keys still jangling in his hand. "Daniel." Claire's voice cracked. "Who did you text back?" That's when I understood. The message hadn't been meant for me. It had been meant for her. Someone had sent it to the wrong number, mine, instead of hers. And in replying, I had accidentally pulled a thread that brought her entire family running to my doorstep at midnight. For 14 days leading up to that night, I would later learn, my in-laws had been planning something. Not an affair. Something else. My mother-in-law, Denise, had been diagnosed with early-stage heart failure 8 months earlier. She'd kept it quiet, not wanting to worry Claire during our anniversary trip. The family had made a decision, without me, to sell a piece of property that was legally half mine, half Claire's, inherited from my grandmother, in order to help cover Denise's care. Michelle had drafted the paperwork at her kitchen table late at night. Gerald had lined up a buyer, an old co-worker looking to expand his lot. Claire, caught between her mother's health and her marriage, had gone along with it, planning to tell me only once it was already done, once there was nothing left to argue about. The text, "Can't stop thinking about this morning," had been about a signing appointment that morning, at a lawyer's office 2 towns over. The him they'd finally told wasn't a lover. It was the buyer's lawyer, informed the deal could close. Denise's motivation wasn't cruelty. It was fear of losing her daughter's family to a hospital bill, fear of asking me directly and hearing no, fear of becoming, in her own words later, a problem nobody signed up for. But fear doesn't excuse what came next, in Gerald's own words, standing in my driveway that night, his breath visible in the cold air. "It's already signed, Daniel. It's done. We didn't think you needed to be part of this one." 14 days. 14 days of decisions made about my property, in my name, without my signature. That's when the second complication hit. Claire, standing between us in her thin coat, arms wrapped around herself, said quietly, "Maybe it's easier if you just let this one go." For my mom. For a moment, standing there in the cold with the porch light flickering above us, I almost did. But 3 months earlier, almost like some part of me had sensed a storm coming, I had done something quiet. When my grandmother's estate finalized, I had the deed refiled, not out of suspicion of Claire, but out of habit, the old childhood habit of never leaving anything to silence. I had placed the property in a trust with a single condition: any sale required 2 signatures, notarized, in person. Mine. And only mine, for that specific parcel. I hadn't told anyone. Not even Claire. It felt, at the time, like an old scar talking. Now it felt like the only solid ground in the room. 2 nights later, we all sat around Denise and Gerald's dining table, Claire, Michelle, Gerald, Denise in her recliner with an oxygen tube resting against her cheek, a soft hiss coming from the machine beside her. The lamp overhead buzzed faintly. A clock ticked somewhere in the kitchen. Nobody touched their food. Michelle kept refolding her napkin into smaller and smaller squares. Gerald slid a folder across the table. The paper made a dry, scraping sound against the wood. "Just sign here, Daniel. We'll split the proceeds fair. Your name's just a formality at this point." I didn't raise my voice. I set my coffee cup down without a sound. "This is not a formality," I said. "It has been mine for 2 years. Since the day my grandmother passed. And no sale on that parcel is valid without my notarized signature. It never was." The room went still. Michelle looked at the folder like it had betrayed her. Denise's hand trembled slightly against the oxygen tube, her eyes filling. Gerald opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time since I'd known him, he had nothing to say. The clock kept ticking. Claire looked at me, eyes wet, voice barely above a whisper. "You knew this whole time?" "I didn't know any of this was happening," I said. "I just never leave anything unprotected. Not after what I grew up with." Denise finally spoke, her voice thin, catching on every other word. "We should have asked you." "I was scared, Daniel. I didn't want to be a burden on you too, not with the wedding still fresh, not with everything you were building." "You're not a burden," I told her. "You're family." "But family asks. Family doesn't sign." I didn't walk out. I didn't punish anyone. Instead, I told them I'd help, on my terms. I offered to co-sign a smaller loan against my own savings to cover Denise's treatment, keeping the land in the family for Claire's future, if everyone agreed going forward that no decision involving my name would be made again without me in the room. Gerald nodded, quiet for once, jaw tight. Denise cried, reaching for Claire's hand across the table. Michelle apologized, twice, her voice cracking the second time. 3 weeks later, Claire and I sat on our porch on a Sunday morning, 2 mugs of coffee between us, steam curling up into the cool air, the same porch where headlights had once swept across my face at midnight. It was quiet now, the good kind of quiet. A bird was working on something in the gutter above us. The street was empty. I almost lost you over a text sent to the wrong number, she said, turning her mug slowly in her hands. You didn't lose me, I said. We just finally said out loud what should have been said months ago. A few weeks after that, Denise started her treatment, fully covered, no property sold. Sunday dinners started again, but different now, slower, more honest, conversations that used to skim the surface now going a little deeper. Nobody hides folders under napkins anymore. Gerald calls before he visits now, something he never used to do. Small thing. It matters. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: silence doesn't protect the people you love. It just delays the moment you have to be honest with them. Boundaries aren't betrayal, they're what keeps love from becoming quiet resentment. You can love your family and still refuse to disappear inside their decisions. And sometimes the people who hurt you most aren't cruel, they're just scared, and scared people make quiet, desperate choices. If you've ever sat in a room where everyone knew something you didn't, where love and control got tangled together until you couldn't tell which was which, I hope you find your own version of that porch. That quiet morning where the truth finally has nowhere left to hide, and coffee tastes a little better because of it. If this story meant something to you, consider subscribing. Every story here is for someone who needed to hear it.